The Queens of Spice podcast is created for adult audiences only. Our show contains cursing, vulgar content, dark humor, descriptions of sexual acts and desires, and is not suitable for listeners under the age of 18. Some episodes also contain themes which may be triggering for listeners. Please take care of yourself.
Now that lavender shit, I need pussy-scented pillowcases.
Welcome to the Queens of Spice podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ragaraga. I'm here with my two BFFs, Ash and Jack. Hi, guys.
Hey.
Hi, Rachel.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just swell. We're reading a very special fanfic today called Novitiate by SecretReyloTrash on AO3. And we read...
Oh, no.
Get ready for
This is
some more
no-
religious trauma.
Not that Reylo thing.
Yeah. So this is a Omegaverse fanfic in the Reylo franchise of fanfics that Ashton's a huge fan of. We read one over a year ago. That was along a similar vein, but also a Reylo fanfic. So we're giving it another shot. So let's see how this goes. Being sent away for her own protection from what she is the greatest cruelty that has ever been known. This new life is faced with a grit jaw and a bruised sense of optimism. Rey is too old to just be an orphan anymore. So now she's a nun instead. So welcome to Novitiate. This is Ash. What year do you think this is based in? Do you remember
I have no idea.
there's no technology of sorts.
Yeah.
It felt to me like the 50s maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if I would have gone. Yeah. I thought 80s at some point, but 50s might make more sense. Because also remember, I haven't read this as recently as you have.
That's true. I think my vibe was the 50s. However, they have things like speech therapists in this, so I'm I don't know where that falls into the realm of ages, but there's no technology to speak of. There's not even primitive, not primitive, but they don't use rototillers on gardens and stuff, or they don't have access to them, and it's it's very kind of cultish what's going on here, I think. But anyway, that was my general vibe was 50s, but I would totally believe the 80s too, so hard to say.
It's one of those things where you're experiencing a universe that doesn't kind of exist anyway, so it's really easy to take pieces of things and kind of evolve them into something that you want, I guess, which is kind of the big thing with alternate universe fan fiction.
Yeah, and I have to wonder, and I mean, maybe it's the religious overtones, because this is a very kind of religious focused book, obviously. Rey is basically, she jumps from an orphanage straight into a nunnery. And we intro the book with her going to this nunnery, it's up this mountain somewhere. And again, don't know how old Rey is in this setting, don't know where this is located, don't know the time period. You just kind of get dropped into it.
I mean, the one thing with Reylo fanfiction, or the one thing that I've found with a lot of the Reylo fanfiction that I've read or continue to read, is the parallels that the people who the authors often draw to the actual Reylo story itself. So you have those I already said the word parallel, didn't I? So, picking Rey up on a desert planet versus finding Rey and her being just, a random orphan, and hey, you can come and join us here because we want you. Kind of like the Jedi want her. Maybe. I don't.
Jacqueline, I need to interject real quick. Do you remember what Omegaverse is?
No.
Okay. My dear love Ashton, would you like to explain Omegaverse to Jacqueline, please?
Jack, you don't remember penguins?
Yes, I do remember those.
But the book about penguins?
I only remember that a human laid an egg.
I mean, if you're going to remember, you don't remember the googly-eyed penises?
There's a lot of googly-eyed penises.
So
I do not.
Jack's like, fuck
Also,
him.
was something blue?
His hair.
Yeah,
Was the
he had a blue
penguin
penis.
blue?
He had a blue tip penis too.
Oh yeah, yeah, the penguins.
Okay.
Jack's like, I remember that. Omegaverse is kind of like overlying alpha, beta, omega dynamics over humans. So like wolf pack or dogman like type.
My notes say that I'm a beta. Is that true?
I wouldn't say so.
Really? What do you think Jacqueline is?
Oh, Jack's totally an omega.
What's an omega?
They're
Well,
the-
okay, I would like to show your work, Ashton.
My notes say, I bet you're a beta. You have big beta vibes. Bucket Nuts is 1000% a beta.
Oh, well, he's definitely not an alpha. No. Okay, do you remember how you wanted to be a little?
For the
Oh,
coloring.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. For the coloring. Omegas are like, okay, in this way, yeah, okay, I can get why you don't think Jack would be like an omega, but omegas tend to be like the like softer and like horny, like
Are you calling me fat?
no, I'm not calling you fat. Omegas are the ones that like reproduce, so they're the ones that like go into heat, and they're the ones that like
Oh my god, you think I would be the one to lay the egg?
yeah, I do. Only because the idea of you creating a little nest on your couch with all your blankets and your pillows, nesting is what it's called, all your blankets and all your pillows and all your comfort items, and having Bucket Nuts bring you like the foods that you like and the comfort items to make you feel comfortable in your own skin until he can rail you 7 ways to Sunday just makes sense to me.
You know what, Ash? When you frame it like that, I get it. That's fair. I'll concede.
Yeah.
that one. Yep. Totally fair.
Here's the thing. In a lot of Reylo Omegaverse, which or you know they call it ABO, whatever. Rey is often described as not what you would consider an Omega to be because she was an orphan in a lot of them, or she was kind of left on her own in a lot of them. So she's not soft and squishy. She's kind of spunky. She's, you know, got to deal with her own shit. And so she's kind of the like anti-Omega, but you know,
But that's also
it
what
almost
makes her a protagonist. So like,
yes. So
that kinda
Jack,
tracks.
yeah. So Jack is similar to that in that like
okay.
having someone to take care of her makes sense in my head. Like, I don't know, like I see Jack just settling into that nicely and being like, oh yeah, because like how many
Yes,
times
Daddy, please love me.
well, maybe not that far, but like how many times have we been over there and Jack's been like, Bucket Nuts, bring me blah 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 blah. That makes you sound like the fucking evil stepmother. I don't mean for it to be like that, but like
You must bring me another strawberry.
Usually I say like please or something.
yeah, look,
Yeah, you're usually pretty kind about it.
I'm not saying you demand it. I'm saying it is oftentimes that Jack asks Bucket Nuts to bring her stuff.
Yes, this is very true.
Yeah, he's a little gopher.
He spoils me.
Yes. Case in point, if Jack was settled into, like, just picture it, a nice, like, pile of pillows and blankets, probably not because Jack needs to be cold all the time, but, like, something of the, like, just cushy things. And she's like, Bucket Nuts, can you bring me some ice cream? And he's like, yeah. Can I have some too? And she's like, no.
Of course he can have some.
Well, yeah, but after you have some. I'm just
That makes
kidding,
her
I know
sound
you
like a
share.
fucking dominatrix or something.
No. It makes her sound like
I'm
a
only
little.
allowed to have some. You can't have any, though. You need to earn it, you bad boy.
Either way, that's my work. Jackson Omega.
Okay, that's fair. I'll concede on that one.
Wait, but what?
You Alpha.
Yeah, obviously.
What's Rachel's reasoning for me being a beta?
Oh, mine was mostly that like the things that Omegas do, you would never do it. Like Omegas are
lay
meant to like be
eggs.
to like they're meant to be bred. That's just not your jam.
I don't think that I wouldn't make good quality stock. I don't think.
You would make good quality bread.
Oh fuck, we gotta do this again, do we? Because the thing of it is, like, when you go into heat, you don't always have like the conscious thought to, like, you know what's happening, and you're like, oh fuck, and like you can either lean into it or be like, I really don't want to get boned 7 ways to Sunday, but you don't really have a choice in the matter because your body's like, need dick now. So like, I mean, I could see Jack being like, I don't want to do this, and then just starfishing.
Yeah. So something else the Omegas do in this one that is, I don't know, Ash. I don't read a lot of Omegaverse, so tell me if this is a weird one or not. But they have like all of the Omegas. So she goes to this nunnery that has like this convent or whatever that is basically a safe haven, quote unquote, for Omegas. It's all religious connotation. This is like a convent, and the Omegas are gathering here as like pure beings under God, basically. But all of the Omegas have this like advanced empathetic connection with each other. And so there are a bunch of like women put together in this one place, and they can all feel each other's emotions all the time.
That was, I think, liberties taken. I haven't read a lot of that, though. You can sometimes see like Omegas being a little bit more sensitive, or in some cases Omegas are chosen because they make other people feel good, like just being around them, where like alphas make other people feel protected, just like by nature of their biology. The pheromones that Omegas give off can make people feel like at peace. But I think that SecretReyloTrash just kind of like took that and like used it to their, because I mean it comes up later on and how that it plays into the story.
It's really interesting because I really enjoyed how it played into the story, in that like,
yeah,
it was a very unique element thrown in, that it said a lot when words wouldn't cover what it was saying. Because Rey is not like, in this one, Rey's a very almost like an underdeveloped teenager feel, where like she doesn't have a lot to say, and she's, I don't know, like she's just very, she feels meek in some ways, in like a social setting, I think. And so like when you come to the emotional stuff, every time she feels emotions from any of the other Omegas, it's like almost a resentful kind of thing, where she's like, get me the hell away from these emotions. I don't want to feel this shit anymore.
I mean, same girl, same.
Tough but fair, absolutely. Like I would, yeah, I that would drive me insane.
I think it's the parallels too, though, right, between the actual like Star Wars franchise and the concepts here, because you'll see that a lot with. But I find particularly in Omegaverse, because like where alphas have these big brooding desires and all of that stuff, you often see Ben Solo as an alpha struggling against his like nature. He's struggling against those desires, but like as a character through the Star Wars franchise, he's also a character that struggles against the things that he feels and wants and thinks, because of like the duality in him. So I think that this is another one of those parallels where Rey in Star Wars grew up very isolated and would have been very, and I guess is to a point very childlike when it comes to her approach to the Force. Like if you think about in The Last Jedi, when Luke says like reach out, and she reaches out with her hand and he's tickling it, and like that whole thing, like she doesn't get it. So it makes sense that as an Omega who has not been raised around other Omegas, and who as like oftentimes like in this kind of situation doesn't want to be an Omega, which you see in a lot of Omegaverse with Reylo. It just, her not wanting to be and like not understanding it, just am I making sense?
I don't know, it almost reads as Asperger's sometimes, of like she's just not like socialized, I guess. And so, and it reflects this way in that like she like her empathy, I guess it doesn't come through until you get well into the book. And I think like that's a big character growth thing. Anyway, let's get back to like her meeting her friends though, because, and we'll intro Ben, as you mentioned. So he's here as an alpha. He is living at the convent. He's like a kind of groundskeeper, caretaker person, but he's an alpha, and he's the only alpha on the property. And basically, he's here to protect Omegas.
Yes, Jacqueline, you understand
Ruh-roh.
completely. Which is
Ruh-roh, Shaggy.
because rutting does happen.
And so technically, so what they do, Jack, is when like a new Omega comes to this convent, because this is a thing that goes on frequently, like they just continue getting members and more members. And I honestly can't speak to like, there's a lot of details left out of this, I'll say, of like, I don't know how many nuns are actually here, or I don't know, like there was just, I know they stay in dormitories. I know there's probably at least 20 of them, but like apart from that, they get a new one every couple weeks too. So it's like, I don't know, it's hard to say. But
Okay.
so every time they get a new Omega come to the convent, they give Ben their pillowcase after they've slept on it for a night, so that he can acclimatize to their scent.
To desensitize them.
So he knows who to bang and who not to bang.
Okay, so here's the thing. Is that
Omega, so you know how I said Omega's scents can make people feel good? Make people feel safe,
they
people
make
feel
alphas
better?
feel really good.
Real horny.
Oh, I'm definitely an Omega then.
Yeah, clearly.
Sniff, sniff, bitches.
Listen, if you threw down at any point in time, bucket nuts would be all over that. We know that. He'd be rubbing up on your shit, sleeping on your pillow. Jack's like, this is awkward and uncomfortable.
Welcome to the Queens of Spice podcast, where we make things super fucking awkward for Jacqueline. I love it.
It's true. It's true.
So the alpha gets there. So one of the first nights Ray is there, the what's her name? The like superior General Holdo comes in and takes her pillowcase and delivers it to the alpha for him to smell, so that he knows who she is.
That makes it sound like dirty, though. Here, Ben, smell her pillow. When really it's just like...
That's really what's going on, though.
I know, but it's more like desensitizing, right? It's kind of like...
At least it's not smell her panties.
Why would you go there?
Because so I could say panties.
Yeah, right. Of course.
So after this, so she
Do
doesn't
weirdos on the internet purchase pillowcases?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Man, I'm pretty sure weirdos on the internet purchase just about anything, so... Or do you mean in this?
Oh, there's no internet in this.
No. Our current day internet folk.
Oh, current day, obviously, yeah.
Are you looking to make some extra coin there, Jack? Hoping to sell your pillowcase?
Yes.
Jack's like, I nap all the fucking time. I would make so much money.
I have one that is highly scented. It's true. I could knock out like 4 pillowcases a day.
You should get on that, man. Start making that
Queens
cheddar.
of
Come on.
Spice pillowcases.
Scented by Jack.
Jesus. Okay. On topic. So she meets her 2 new best friends, who are Rose and Bazine. And Bazine's her roommate. Rose is like, she helps her. She's another novice, so she like helps her get dressed and like shows her how to pin her hair up. And like they wear these like a traditional nun. They wear this garb that like covers their neck and their hair, and so like all of the major scent areas that Omegas have are completely covered, which is just like an added level of protection. You get this like intro where she meets Bazine for the first time, her roommate, and they kind of talk about like, here's what goes on in the monastery. Like, I hope you really enjoy crafts, because we do a lot of crafts. We do like...
Yeah, bitches, I love crafts.
See, Omega.
They knit blankets and sent them for like, I think they said it's like for babies to feel safe when they're first born or something.
Yeah, sure it is.
For alphas to rub one out.
Potentially. And then they also they read books under the guise that, because this is a very religious place, they read like spicy books under the guise that they're learning about what not to lust after.
Me too.
Hard same.
That's why Ashton reads these books.
Yeah, she's trying to save her soul.
I think it's filthy.
Check.
I don't want to go to hell.
And so when
I don't like the heat.
Jesus, fuck that. So when
Same.
Ray's like unpacking all of her stuff, Rose and Bazine are like, "Hey, did you bring any cool shit?" Because this is like picture a traditional convent where it's like you're not allowed to have cool shit. Like you're not allowed to listen to non-secular music. And like Ray has like part of a tube of like lipstick that Rose is immediately like, "Give me this."
We've all seen Sister Act.
Yeah, Whoopi Goldberg's not in this.
Exactly. It's exactly like Sister Act in every single way.
Good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies. I love singing.
I love singing. Yeah, there's singing in this.
So you get a bit of because Ray asks about the alpha specifically and be like, "What is going on about that?" And because she can smell him, like, because this is the first time she's ever smelled this alpha, so she's like very attuned to what is going on here. And like anytime he's around, she's just like, "I can smell him. Like, how did you guys not smell this guy?" And of course they're like, "Well, you get used to it after a while. It's fine." And then they also mention that. So in this universe, alphas, if they issue an omega a command, the omega has to obey. And so the
Alpha
thing about
bark.
this alpha is that he will not issue commands.
He can't.
So at this point, Ray, all that Ray knows is that he won't issue commands. He doesn't know. She doesn't know why.
This is one of the things that I liked about this. This is like, it was such an interesting take. Because like the alpha command thing is pretty prevalent in, I don't think it's, no, yeah, alpha bark is pretty prevalent in a lot of Omegaverse, but it's different. It's always different noise tweaked in different stories. And I find again Omegaverse in fan fiction is, or Reylo fan fiction in particular, is vastly different. But in some of them, it's more of like a loud command, and in other ones, it's just saying something. It makes them do things.
What's the point of being an alpha if you can't command people to do shit? Like, come on.
I mean, my running joke is that if you call me a good girl, I'll do whatever you want. So I understand.
Oh, so you're saying that an alpha should rule with love and not fear or whatever?
Or whatever.
Yeah, there you go. Or whatever.
So to that point though, I think it's the bizarre kind of undertone of religion that's going on here is this sense of control, and not control in the sense of like an alpha controlling omegas, but a sense of this church controlling omegas.
Oh yeah, that's really weird.
Well,
That's a really
anyway.
weird thing that the church would control people. How strange.
This is such a new storyline.
But
The
it's so it's
church- the sacred womb? Oh my god, shocking.
So in this case, one of the tactics they use is that whenever something in the news happens, like in the paper happens, that is like, oh, omegas need to be protected, they always make sure the nuns at this convent know. And so like one of the I think like the overarching story is that like, isn't God merciful because we're all safe here? And then they'll tell them the stories about like, oh yeah, this alpha like lured an omega for like 3 miles and like had his way with her, and all, like just they're always using these tactics, like scare tactics basically, to keep them here and keep them safe, even though like it's exactly what you think it is. It's exactly what you think it is.
Yeah, so shocking. Can't believe
Yeah.
that happened.
Surprise. So the first week goes by and Ray still hasn't met the alpha or been like in the same area as him, and that's like probably by design, like they're trying to acclimatize each other to sense rather. After the first week, it's Bazine's birthday, and Ray is sent to like go help the alpha put chairs up for this birthday celebration she's going to have. Basically, it's just busy bullshit work, and it's just it's really weird because like throughout this story, and I don't know like the take that you had on it, Ash, but like it felt to me that they were always kind of pushing Ray and Ben together. Very specific. Like it seemed very, I don't know, not forced, but it seemed like overt, I guess. That like, oh, hey, you're gonna go help the alpha do XYZ. You're gonna go help. Like they kept making Ray go do things to be around the alpha almost.
It was like a challenge. Like, we're challenging you to stay pure. We're challenging you to be good.
Yeah, I guess, is that the take? I suppose. Yeah.
I don't know. But like that to me would
I don't
be like, here we're gonna put you in this situation, and if you fail, you fucked up. But if you didn't fail, then well, whatever. No one's gonna say anything anyway. But keep moving on. But like, there's always this.
Isn't that like Adam and Eve or some shit?
Yeah, literally, Jack. That's what's up. The
Okay.
temptation thing is strong here.
Religious overtones, right? And like, Rachel, you and I talked about this the other night about the whole religious parallels with the Jedi and all that stuff anyway. And like, you know, is Luke the villain, or is he the savior, or is he both, or can you be both?
Kylo Ren. Is Kylo Ren a victim or a villain?
Oh, he's a victim. He is baby, and I will hear no other word against it. Listen, okay. Like, his mother was a general and a politician and would have been, like, hyper-focused. And, like, in his story is, like, hyper-focused on her career. And his father's Han Solo. You're telling me that you think Han Solo was a good dad? No. No, he was not.
Kylo Ren, a victim of bad parenting.
Yes. And then he's sent off with his crazy celibate uncle.
Is that Luke?
Yep. Hey, oh, sorry. I forgot to mention who the priest is here. The head priest is this
Guess who it is, Jack?
is Father Skywalker.
Oh my god, it isn't.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's following the story, Jack.
Because, like, in Star Wars, like, Ben, or Kylo Ren, is sent away with Luke to become a Jedi and to learn, like, the ways of the Force. And he starts to have dark thoughts, and just, like, Luke sees it, and then, you know, everything goes to shit, and everything falls in place. But it, like, is Luke a victim or a villain? Like, sorry, a villain or a savior?
Yeah, who is the real villain? Who knows? I don't.
The only thing I know is the whole Luke, it's me or daddy thing. So I don't know.
Direct quote.
Luke, it's me, your daddy.
Luke, it's me, your daddy. I'm not sure why that had like Arnold Schwarzenegger vibes. To it, sorry.
I went for Mario. It's a me, your daddy.
Oh, God.
It's a me, your daddy.
Amazing.
I love it.
Yo, it's me. I'm your dad.
Okay, so Rey is setting up chairs with Ben, and she's talking to him, like having a like trying to keep up a conversation, and he just like keeps stonewalling her and give her weird looks or whatever. And so she's like, okay, cool, this guy fucking hates me. So when they're having the birthday party, like I think it's like both Bazine and Rose are, you know, apparently every time a new Omega meets the Alpha, they're always like, oh my god, how did it go, like what's going on, like what's the vibe. And nobody told Rey that Ben was mute, like he just doesn't speak at all. And so they were like laughing at her because she was trying to talk to him, and she's like, yeah, I tried to talk to him and he just wouldn't talk to me back, like he's so rude, or he hates me or something. And they're like, dude, he's mute, like he's not gonna talk to you at all.
What? Do you know how long I would talk to someone before I realized
Yes.
that they were never going to
Yes.
respond?
Jacqueline, hard fucking same.
Probably about as long as you were talking to the group chat until you realized the mic didn't work.
Yeah, I was wondering why you guys were ignoring me. It's like, come on now.
Amazing.
That seemed like a valid question.
So that night, after the party and all the stuff, Rey is in bed sleeping, and something wakes her up out of the dead of night, and it's another smell, and she's like, god damn it, like she's still not acclimatized to all the scents around here, so it constantly wakes her up. And she wakes up and like goes to look out the window, and she can see into the courtyard, like by the front gate, and she sees Ben standing in the courtyard under a light, and then she sees
Oh my god, I know what happened.
another Omega.
Never mind.
Just kidding.
Jack was like, I know this story. Did you just say she peed the bed?
No, I thought he peed the bed
What?
and she smelled it.
Oh.
Oh my god, Jacqueline.
Who's your
right.
daddy
Okay.
now, Ben?
Oh god.
I need my daddy.
What?
Okay, so this other alpha showed up, and like there's this weird unspoken showdown where they're like, he's got like bright red hair or something. He's just standing there looking at Ben.
It's Hawks.
And Ben's looking at him. And Ben's holding like a pipe. And they're just having this like fucking showdown as alphas do.
It's unspoken showdown because that guy's mute.
Anyway. But the other alpha doesn't say anything either. Yeah, they're alphas. They're posturing, right? It's a thing they do.
It's like two dogs barking at each other from one side of the fence and the other. That was the image in my head.
Literally, except one dog can't bark.
One dog can't bark, so respectfully, the other one doesn't bark either.
So they just stare at each other.
Respectfully. Okay, so Jesus. And so basically they just have this like quiet exchange, obviously, and then the other alpha just fucks off. Off they fuck. And that's the last you hear of them for quite a while. I think it's the next day or the day after, Ray is given the task to like help the alpha. Oh, I should have mentioned. When Ray was coming to the monastery, they were in this car and they were driving past these big walls. I shouldn't say big. They're like hip height. Like, you know, like probably 2.5, 3 feet. These like stone walls. And whenever a vehicle comes through, they're dismantled. But then after the vehicle comes through, they reconfigure the walls so that you can't drive through unless they're brought down. And this is like another level of protection for the Omegas here. So someone can't just like try to drive up and come and kidnap them, I guess.
Protection.
Yeah, it's another protection for them. But so Ray is tasked with like helping Ben take down the walls this one afternoon because there's like a new arrival coming or something. And then this is where you start getting this, like, again, she talks to Ben regardless if he's going to talk back or not. But this is where you get the discourse of like, Ray fucking hates it here. And it's just another cage. She went from like orphanage cage to like nun cage. And she has these like ongoing thoughts of like, oh, I'm going to die in this place. Like, this is it for me. Like, I'm not allowed to live a life. As an Omega, I have to stay here and I have to exist in this space forever. And there's no other life for me.
Sounds comforting.
Yep.
There's no question about your future. It's just bleak.
I mean, you never have to make a decision ever again.
I mean, I'm not a fan, but I can see how you might be a fan, Jacqueline.
Do they feed me?
Yes.
Yes, the food is actually pretty okay, apparently.
Oh, and you said that people help her get dressed. That's weird, but okay.
But you'd have to physically feed yourself.
What?
Yeah, they don't wait on you hand and foot.
You'd have to physically feed yourself, but they would provide you with the food.
Maybe I could pretend I couldn't chew, and so they just give me one of those NG tubes. So I wouldn't have to.
I think it was more likely they'd chew it up and spit it in your mouth for you, like a baby bird.
Oh, like a baby bird. That's even
Oh, God.
cuter.
Okay, so like another day or two passes, and the new person arrives, and I think they say about her is like she's like the picture of purity. Like she was already kind of a pure soul, I guess, before she came here. But then she is also showing all of the other nuns like pictures she took of herself in lingerie that she had been selling to people. Anyway,
What a
that was just like a
girl.
weird aside. And I'm like, okay, cool. Good for you. Like, get your money, girl. So this day in particular, though, Ray has to deliver linens because they have like a launder, like they have a laundry place and they launder stuff all the time. Anyway, so she's delivering linens to the Alpha's cabin. She walks up the front doorstep and goes to like leave the linen, like, knock on the door, leave the linens. And she hears like him grunting inside. So obviously she peeks through the window and he's holding a pillowcase like up to his nose and jerking it right there.
Love it.
Jack's like, yep.
And so Ray's like Omega high brain kicks in and she's like, must go service Alpha. Like, Alpha would love it right now if I was on my knees doing that for him. Blah, blah, blah. And so you get this like this interesting, like the literary device in the italics where the hindbrain is kicking in a bit, like, and giving her like almost commands or like desires of what her like Omega self should be doing. But like then you get this like, you know, this dichotomy of her like human side of like being like, no, why would we do that? That's an insane thing to do. We're going to leave the linens and run.
He doesn't even talk to us.
Literally, Jack.
How would we know when he came? He wouldn't make a sound.
Wait.
He does
if you're
grunts and stuff.
mute, yeah. You can still make noises, right?
I think he moans in this too. Because she heard him grunting. That's how she knew he was jerking it.
Right.
Yeah. I find it interesting too with the hindbrain stuff because it was a conversation I'd seen on, I think it was Twitter. This person had been commenting about how they hate how there's this like voice in Omegaverse with Reylo, there's this voice in their head, and other people were like, well, you know, if you think about it, when they write it, I guess from like the author's perspective, not this specific author, but other people who write fan fiction, they use it as a means of like showing the dark side, particularly with the Ben, I guess, like whispering things. That's that like alpha hindbrain being like, yeah, go fuck her, do the thing, and like obviously there's no dark side in this, but like that dark side being like, yeah, make her your Padawan or bitch or whatever you want to call her.
I love it. It's very funny because like I really like it in this one because the way that SecretReyloTrash writes is that like it's not a super descriptive book in that like it gives you every detail of what's going on, and so you'll get this like the hindbrain will kick in and say something, and then Ray has already done something, and then there's a pause of like, wait a second, why are we doing that? Stop. Like it's like you're almost jumping ahead, and then her humanity kicks in and she's like, wait, we gotta stop fucking doing that right now. Like you get this almost like almost a blackout in the writing where it's like, oh shit, the thing has happened already, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? Where did that come from? And then you're like, oh, that's the Omega hindbrain taking the fucking wheel and doing whatever the fuck it wants.
That's you getting ready to starfish, Jack.
Yeah. Jack's going to subspace ready to starfish.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Pre-
Please give me my pillowcases.
So I should mention too that like Ray thinks that the pillowcase he's jerking it to is the new girl's pillowcase because she just showed up like yesterday, and she knows that like the first night that's what happens, like they give him the pillowcase or whatever, and so that's what she is thinking right now, which is a reasonable thing to think, and the audience, you're thinking that too.
No, I'm not. Come on now.
I told you. You were listening to the tone of my voice and you knew it was wrong, but that's okay.
No, I knew right away. He keeps that pillowcase of Ray's under his own pillowcase.
Jacqueline, did you read this?
Did you read this,
No.
Jacqueline? Damn it. Okay, so the next day, Rose goes into heat. And this is where you get to see how they treat the Omegas in heat here. And so basically when they go into heat, they just like lose their faculties, must fuck or die situation, and they're just in serious pain and agony the whole time.
That's a real mood.
Because they're not fucking. So they feel like they're going to die.
Yeah, and so like there's this thing again of like, hey, you're not mated to an alpha, so you should be made to suffer. And you're like the pure womb of God basically, and you were meant to suffer, and so suffer you shall. And so they strap them to these like beds like with restraints and stuff, and just let them suffer for like days on end. And Paige, who is Rose's sister, she came to the convent. She's a beta, and she came to the convent because Rose was coming here and wanted to stay with her sister. And so Paige, it works in the infirmary because she's not ever affected by heat or like her heat cycle because she's a beta. And so she's the one that looks after all of the Omegas in their heat cycle. And so Paige is there like, you know, just making sure she stays hydrated and like trying to comfort her and stuff. And, you know, just like overall being a comfort to her sister in this case.
That sounds like a terrible job.
Yeah, tying women down.
Yeah. So at one point, Ray does come in and like offer her to tag her out for like 10 minutes to be like, hey, if you want to go take a break, like I'll stay here with Rose. Like, please go chill out. Because as you can imagine, like Imagine someone you love dearly is like just fucking suffering in front of you and there's fuck all you can do about it. And then you have to stay there and watch this happen and make sure the restraints stay tightened. And just like, it's just so fucking, all of it's bad, all of it's terrible. And then to inflict that upon your, like a good close person in your life is just like another level of fucking awful.
I'd at least throw you a vibrator.
Vibrators don't exist in this time frame, I think.
Well, then I'd shake your bed for you.
Hump jumping, singular.
Soaking.
Are you ready?
The point is that the Omegas are supposed to be suffering. Like that's the point of it. This whole like convent thing is that like you're meant to like it comes back to the original sin of like women should be suffering. And so they're just letting them suffer in the name of this, you know, their god basically.
Because women should suffer.
In how many ways do we have to suffer though? Come on, this guy that doesn't speak, sniffing our pillowcases and being tied to our vibrating beds.
Jesus. So that night, Ray notices Ben pick up a note from the infirmary window and pocket it. And it's a weird scene. It's like almost like a throwaway scene. You're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, why is the Alpha like picking up a note from the infirmary where an Omega is going under heat right now? Like, what is going on? Like, it was a very kind of weird thing early on in the book, and you're just like, okay, that's strange. And then you just carry on from life.
Yeah, but he can't talk, so how else is he going to communicate with people?
Well, and that's fair because, that's the other thing too, because like at this level, it's like you don't know anything about Ben really. Like you don't know shit about him. You know that he's an alpha. You know he likes to jerk off to pillowcases, and you know he's mute, and that's all you got.
And he's big.
I mean, what really else do you need to know about someone?
Thread count at least.
That's all you had to put in your dating profile. It's like, listen, I jerk off to pillows.
Exactly.
I don't speak.
Scented pillowcases.
Scented pillowcases only.
Yes.
Scent. Now that lavender shit, I need pussy scented pillowcases.
Ashton. That's disgusting.
Pussy scented pillowcases.
Oh,
Okay.
my goodness.
So the next day, Bazine and Ray have a picnic. It's hard to follow up from that. Okay. They have a picnic.
Who has a
Bazine brings
picnic?
Who cares at this
Bazine
point?
and Ray, they have a picnic. They they bring like Bazine takes some leftover birthday cake, and they like sit in the grass, like out in the forest a bit, and like just like lay down and like they take their wimples off or whatever, and just like, you know, chill out and have their hair loose and like feel the wind through their hair, and then they fall asleep.
You said wimple or whatever the fuck. And in my brain,
Wimple?
I thought it was a Pokemon. In my brain, for some reason, Caterpie came to my brain, and I was like, why is she talking about Pokemon?
There's Pokemon in the tall grass, Ashton. Obviously.
Wurmple. Isn't that a Pokemon?
Yeah, but this is a wimple.
I know, but it sounds like Wurmple. Isn't that a Pokemon?
Oh, okay. So Bazine and Ray end up like having this like not a super deep conversation, but they have this conversation about being Omegas and specifically and being stuck here in this place. And Bazine is like, I should frame her too. She is like, it's weird that she's here. Is how Ray kind of looks at it, is that like she's a very kind of free spirit independent person, and she's a big personality, and it's weird to see her as a captive basically, because that's how they describe her. And so she has this like moment where they're talking about being Omegas in particular, and it's almost like this weird like kind of sub-dob thing where she's like, yeah, do you ever think that there's power in being bait as an Omega? And that like you have all this power to control how things go. Like this entire convent wouldn't exist if Omegas didn't exist. And so she's looking at it in the other regard of like, we have all this power, but they're keeping us trapped here. Like, what is this? And then Rey, they fall asleep, as I mentioned. And then as, like, they wake up, and what they say about Omegas in this one, too, is that Omegas are like prey almost. So they tend to stick together and have that prey mentality of like, of staying in a pack and a group. At least in this kind of setting. And when they wake up from their sleep, Azine's like freaking out and like putting her wraps and stuff back on because the alpha is standing like very close to them because he had smelled them. Obviously, they were just like, they didn't have their coverings on and stuff, and so their scents are like more potent than usual. And when this happens, like Bazine just like yells at Rey to like put your wraps back on, and then she bolts, and Rey is stuck there trying to like put herself back together, and the alpha just like tackles her and pins her to the ground and starts like sniffing her hair basically.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part I'm gonna have to read, isn't it?
Oh no, Jack, I got something real good for you.
You're welcome.
Oh.
So they have this moment where like the alpha is, you can tell he's, I don't know, Rey can't get a handle on it. And so this whole book is written like third person from Rey's perspective. And so you don't early on get this handle of what is actually going on here. And so Rey chalks it up to like, oh, I had my hair down and I had my wraps off and everything. So like it's just really potent smell that made him act that way to like basically pin her down and like try to and smell her basically, like, which is what they do.
You smell real good.
Well, and then he like comes back to his faculties or something. Like she apologizes of like, I'm so sorry I was out here or something. And he like kind of snaps back into it and he's like, oh, wait. And then just leaves. And so she goes back to her room or whatever. And that's that. And of course, this is like kind of sitting in her brain for a while about something along the lines of like being a temptation to this. And just like, I don't know, like she feels this immense amount of guilt of having like baited an alpha basically. And so she's in like confession or something the next couple days, and she's going through this like diatribe in her head about like all of these things that she feels guilt over, but she would never like voice those because she doesn't think it's wrong. And so she ends up confessing about like, I don't know, like listening to secular music or something in the common room, and then like the next day the record player ends up broken or something, like another like bullshit control issue thing that's going on in the background.
Interesting.
And then I want to say like it's the next day or two, whatever, she's working in the kitchens, I think. And this is where you get like this little insight of like, she steps out of the kitchens into like the outback alley area or whatever. And she like has this moment of too much. Like it's all too much. So like as an Omega, she can feel everyone else's emotions, like all the other Omega's emotions. And so she has to walk outside to have this like breath of air away from all the Omegas, because it's just like, it's overwhelming for her and she can't deal with it. And so she just like, she's sitting out back like by a wall or something, and Ben comes over and like leans against the wall kind of just casually. And she starts telling him, I think what they're trying to do here is it's like basically an actual confession as opposed to the fake confession she did like the previous day. And so she's talking to him about feeling trapped in this place and how it's like punishing, and it's not actually, they're not trying to keep them safe, they're trying to keep them down and away from society. And how it's just like, it's not, it's not actually helpful for Omegas to be in this situation. It's just hindering them. And they're like this weird prize they put on this pedestal to trap them, basically.
It's very similar to in The Last Jedi, where they start talking to each other through the Force bond, and Rey starts to question things, and, they have that, like, bonding moment. That's kind of what I took from it. I mean...
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, those that's, like, there's so many of those kind of little itty-bitty scenes in here that I'm like, oh, this is exactly what's going on from The Last Jedi. Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is a kind of part of the fun with fan fiction, is, like, the forever Easter eggs.
Yeah, and I love seeing how they interpret things, because there's so many things in this that are like, I could like you were talking about parallels earlier, like, because of course that's what this entire thing is that there's all these little itty bitty parallels about like Rey doesn't feel comfortable talking to Luke about anything, but she feels comfortable talking to Ben about a bunch of stuff.
The sacred Jedi text.
Exactly. Like it's like the old versus the new kind of situation, which is like, you know, the religious overtones are strong in this one.
Really?
Literally the purpose.
I mean, we're getting to some pretty religious stuff.
Yeah. So a couple days later, Bazine starts her heat. And there's this moment where when Bazine finds out that the record player is broken specifically, she has this like breaking moment. Like she is a trapped bird in a cage and she can't stay here. Like it's just not like it's stifling and killing her. And part of her thing is that like she has an identity that is being destroyed. And like she is nobody here and that is problematic to her. And so she has this thing right before her heat starts of this like moral quandary of not being who she is. And so during her heat, that translates into her trying to flee from the convent. And of course, Rey, because like Rey should have, as soon as Rey noticed that Bazine wasn't in her bed, she should have said something to somebody and she didn't. And so what Rey did is she actually got up out of bed in the middle of the night and tried to go find Bazine because she's like, you know, I like the guilt again with the like, I should have mentioned this to someone, but now I'm just as guilty as she is by not having said anything. So I'm going to go find her and deal with this myself. And of course, as Rey's like leaving the dorms or whatever, she runs into Ben, who's like, I don't know, I assume does night patrols or some shit, whatever. And they go off and try to find Bazine because Ben does that thing where he like sniffs the air. And he's like, I know where she is. Obviously, he doesn't say that, but you know what I'm saying.
He grunts it.
He wags his tail. Let's go this way.
Literally, Jack.
What is it, Lassie? Timmy fell down the well again?
Bazine fell down the well. Oh, no. So they go and find Bazine. And, of course, Ben is immediately like, he gives Rey the stink eye of like, you're not coming with me. And she's like, the fuck I am. And so she follows him down the hill anyway. And so they make it down to like, I think it's like the first wall, like closest to the road, like the main road. And Bazine is like curled up against one of the, like the wall basically. And so you get this moment where, Rey is like, she gets super affected by Bazine's heat too. And so like, she's having a hard time. Cause again, like the Omega, like empathy connection thing, she's having a hard time like keeping control of her own faculties. Basically, like Ben picks Bazine up and takes her back up to the infirmary and drops her off there. In the meantime, though, Rey, who's with them the whole time, is like slowly slipping into her own heat because this is like Bazine's heat and the empathy and all this stuff being around her is triggering it for her. Because usually when they put the Omegas in the infirmary, they're like almost quarantined and they have this like netting that like stops their sense from traveling and stuff, and so it's very isolating so that it doesn't affect other Omegas in that way. And so by being so close to Bazine during her heat, Rey is like being triggered by this as well, and Ben is picking up on that. And so there's this is where you get like this, I don't know, like a pivotal moment in the book basically where Ben is like, he's not commanding Rey, but Rey is falling under his command almost. And they're having this moment where you can tell they keep scenting each other and stuff like this. And Rey like is hiding in the grass. And then Ben like comes back for her after he drops Bazine off. And there's this like exchange, but then I think it's like Skywalker comes out and is like, oh, Ben, there you are. Like, what's going on sort of thing. As this is going on, Rey being in heat is triggering Ben's rut, which is when it's a similar thing to heat except for alphas. And so during Alpha's rut, he gets shackled to a crucifix.
Oh
like
my
in
God.
the in like the main like chapel or whatever.
So just everyone
'Cause that
can
makes
see
sense.
him.
Well, I mean, I say main chapel. I assume it's like an antechamber of some sort because there's no way it can be in the main chamber because then they couldn't have mass or whatever.
No, they have mass around him suffering against the crucifix.
I mean, that's what they would
Could
have
you
done to
imagine?
Jesus, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
So Ray basically she goes off and gets herself cleaned off because she smells like benzene and whatever, and she's like, okay, I need to get this scent off me because it's like it'll trigger everybody else and all this shit. So she goes and bathes and whatever, and then this is where like the hindbrain takes the fuck over for her because now that Alpha's in a rut, she has to go to Alpha and like be under his command basically, and so the Omega brain just takes right over and she waltzes into the chapel like with barely a second thought. Like I think the second thought is, oh, if I get caught I'll just say XYZ, and then carries on, like does not panic about this, just goes for it. And of course, like, you have Ben strapped to this crucifix on his knees, just like a snarling animal trying to free himself as soon as Ray walks in this chapel because he can smell her going into heat as well. And so you get this like very animalistic scene where he like tries to bite her and then she obviously frees him. And then of course you get the mating situation. Shouldn't say that. It's not mating. You get the rut situation where they obviously do it, and then he knots her.
They obviously do it.
Obviously. As soon as he knots her, Skywalker walks in. And he's like, Ben, what have you done? You like horrible, awful person. Like you broke your vows, basically. If you're supposed to protect these Omegas, and here you are knotting an Omega.
The sacred Jedi texts.
The sacred Jedi texts. They're in her vagina the whole time.
You shall not come.
So, of course, we have the escalation that happens here is that both of them ended up breaking their vows. So, and I mean, technically, Rey hadn't taken her vows yet, but like she's no longer pure. Like he has taken her virginity as well, and so that was a big part of like being like an Omega here was the purity factor. Which blah. Anyway, they are taken in front of Superior General Holdo and basically made to wed so that they can like this is a big scandal now basically because they're not wed and they're not supposed to be doing this together, and so they make them get married.
No boinking before marriage.
Obviously.
And so then Rey goes back to Ben's cabin and they ride out the rest of her heat basically.
They ride it out,
Literally.
do they?
They literally ride it out for several
Just
days.
bang it out.
Bang it out.
And this is where you find out that, because I think they're like Rey is like laying in bed one morning or something, and she sees this thing sticking out from the side of the bed, and she pulls it, and it's a pillowcase. And she's like, "Oh God, weird pillowcase." But then she smells it, and she's like, "Wait, this is my pillowcase." And that's what this entire room smells like. Is my scent mixed with the Alpha's scent. And this is where you find out that he's been like all over her scent for a while, like ever since she arrived. And so now you're getting into this like fated mate situation of like this was always meant to be her Alpha because he was like obsessed with her scent over anybody else.
Are we supposed to be surprised by this?
I mean, we know how the story goes. Like there's a level of we know how this is going to end situation, but that's like
Okay.
Anyway. There's this like really kind of charming thing that happens where Rey doesn't have to spend her time being a nun anymore. Like she spends her time being a wife, I guess. And so she doesn't like have anything to do. So she's kind of listless and she goes and like collects berries in the woods and like walks by this creek and shit. And like she just like exists. Like she doesn't have any responsibilities per se. And so she keeps like collecting berries because there's nothing else she can do. And I think it's an Omega hindbrain thing of like must collect things for Alpha to have. And so she collects like a container of berries every day and leaves it on the table. And Ben inevitably eats like half of them or whatever. And she continues doing this day after day after day. And this does have a point, and I'll bring it up later. She ends up like doing she wants to start like gardening or something. Like she's just like poking around, like doesn't have anything to do. Like I said, listless. And so one day she goes off to the library to pick up books on gardening.
Library? They let these bitches read?
They were reading spicy books earlier.
They're supposed to read books so that they know how terrible they are, so they can avoid this in the future. They're supposed to understand it, understand the sins, not commit them,
not get
horny.
horny.
Like for leisure.
So they do have like a bunch. Anyway, so there's books on gardening though, and there's this adorable scene where she goes into the library and Ben is there reading, like he's sitting down, kind of tucked away in a corner somewhere, and he's reading. And she comes in and she's like, "Excuse me, you have to be quiet in the library." And he just like has a chuckle because he can't speak, and it's very funny.
So she's funny. I like it.
Hilarious.
I'm sold. She's funny. Don't care about the crucifix thing, but she's funny.
So she finds some gardening books, whatever, and then checks out. So she starts doing the gardening thing, which is great. There's like a patch of garden out behind Ben's cabin where she can like start planting stuff because she has nothing else to do. I think a couple days later, there's this like Ray she has a moment where she's like, oh yeah, I suppose that like when you're not a nun here, you kind of have all this freedom. And so Ben had just like gone to town that day for funsies, and he had picked her up a dress because again, she's an orphan, so like she doesn't have a lot of possessions in general. So she owns like one kind of ratty dress and like then her like nun outfit, which she ain't wearing anymore. And so he buys her this like cute blue linen dress or something, and she has this like bizarre moment where, which I think like this is definitely a Star Wars throwback of like having possessions and being in possessions of things, because Rey never like owned anything. And so for Ben to like gift her a possession like this is like kind of a really big deal for her.
Well, that's nice.
And then she also like has this moment where she's like, oh, like I see, like you're allowed to go to town. That means I'm allowed to go to town too, right? So like a couple days later, she just like starts the day with like, hey, I'm gonna go to town today. And Ben just like shrugs. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever, like no big deal. And so he goes and helps her like take down the walls and like loans her. There's like a truck or something there they use, so like lends her the truck. And then like gives her $20 to go to town. Which again, I'm like, this gotta be the 50s. $20 is not a lot of money.
Buy your bitch a
Does
dress.
she just buy candy?
No, she goes to like the hardware store and buys like supplies and stuff for her garden. And then she does, however, Jack, you'll like this. She goes to the only diner in town and she buys a milkshake.
Yes, girl. Is it chocolate?
They don't say. I'm definitely assuming it's chocolate though.
Okay.
Because if you're gonna fuck around on vows, you fuck around on vows with chocolate.
Yeah, exactly.
So when she's sitting at this diner though, she's, just chilling out, minding her own business. A dude walks in this diner and he's got bright red hair, and she immediately knows
knew it.
that it's the alpha who was at the gate, like a couple
was
weeks ago
respectfully
now.
not talking.
But wagging his tail.
He's having a
'Cause the other
respectful,
guy
quiet
can't
showdown.
talk.
She sees him, and of course she panics the fuck out of this because, again, like, and I should say, Omegas are like super rare. So for them, number one, to be a bunch of Omegas in one place is a very rare thing to happen. And Alphas, I think, aren't super, like, I think they're super rare as well, because like this is the first time she's ever come across another Alpha, because she's like, well, number one, she avoided them when she was in the orphanage, which was an easy thing to do for her, and because of that, she didn't mate at the quote-unquote right time, hence being shipped off to a convent. Because there's all these rules around Omegas in society that, like, there are certain places you can't go if you're an unmated, unclaimed Omega, because like it will cause a riot and people will die. Like, it's an entire fucking thing.
Right.
And so, like, if you're not a claimed Omega, you're not supposed to be going places. But since Rey is married and claimed, then it's okay. But so this dude is just like, and all he does is like sniff the air one time and then ignores her completely. So he just sits there, chills, orders coffee, and drinks his coffee and carries on. And then Rey, like, obviously she's panicking, so she gets up and leaves. So by the time she's like driving back to the convent, she's like chilled out a bit. and she is listening to the radio or something, and this like, I think just listening to the radio in general triggers her to be like, wait a second, I need to go one more thing before I leave, or before I go back to the convent. And so
does she do it?
she goes off and buys a radio.
Yes, because she fucking broke the thing.
She didn't, but somebody else did because of her.
I should mention too that like, so her two friends Bazine and Rose, ever since she got married, she hasn't really seen them. Like she'll come across them on occasion, but like she doesn't spend time with them anymore like she used to, because there's this like,
yep, that's what happens.
there's this like weird kind of, well, it's also like a jealousy thing of like, oh, you have your alpha now, and like we don't get an alpha basically, and it's just like, it's just a weird thing to go back into that setting. And so
you getting dick.
yeah, basically they're like, oh, you're getting dick, I'm not getting dick, that's rude.
Don't come around me with your dick gettingness, Jesus.
Your milkshake brought the
So-
boys to the yard.
I want a milkshake.
I want you to have a milkshake, Jack.
Might order DoorDash. Okay, carry on.
So she buys this radio and then she goes home.
She did all this
One
with
of the-
$20. That's amazing.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying of like, when
Yeah,
is the,
maybe it was the 50s.
it could have been, this is what I'm saying of like, it's hard to gauge it, but like it could be the 50s, 60s, that would make sense with
40s,
that kind of money.
50s.
So starts hanging out. So because of this, she has this like little display, I'll say. So they go to Vespers in the evening. It's just like a short mass basically in the evening sometimes. Ray doesn't go, obviously. Now that she's married and whatever, she's like, fuck church, not going to that anymore, don't give a shit. And so this one evening after Vespers, she's like sitting out in the middle of the courtyard, and she's got her radio playing, and she's like just sitting there with blankets around her, like kind of getting cozy. And she's got this radio playing, and Bazine immediately, when she gets out of Vespers, beelines for her, because Bazine's like fucking obsessed with music. And so Ray bought this radio with the intent to be like luring Bazine back into her life. And there's this interesting scene where as soon as Bazine approaches her, she drops to her knees, like this music and Ray are her savior. And it's like just bringing her so much joy and happiness right now. And there's this like interesting kind of parallel going on here of like, oh, this is what I'm here to worship. I'm not here to worship the God I just, spent time near or something. It's like, no, I'm here to worship the music. And then of course, so like Ray's like, hey, anytime you want to listen to music, you should come over to the cabin and just hang out and we'll listen to music. And so that's what they end up doing, which is wonderful.
Okay, I thought she was going to like gift it to the whole place, but really she just keeps it for herself.
Stay tuned, Jack. We're getting there.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing, Jack, and she specifically cites this in the book too, that like if she gives that to Bazine, it will end up gone, because anything that the nuns have, they can't covet. So Ray owning it, however, they can't touch it because she's not a nun anymore and they can't control her.
Neener, neener, neener.
So she's basically keeping it safe because eventually like it'll be bad.
Okay. I see.
Okay, so Bazine comes over a couple times and they hang out and whatever. And I think like one of the last times Bazine comes over, she tells Ray about how Ben goes to confession every week. And this is like triggering to Ray because she's like, well, he goes to confession. That means he talks to the priest about his confession, which means he can talk. So why doesn't he talk to me? And she has this big like,
I can talk.
she can sing. And so they get this moment where her Omega hindbrain takes over again. And it's like, oh, that Alpha doesn't love you. Alpha doesn't care about you. Alpha doesn't want to look after you because Alpha won't talk to you. And it's like she gets in her head a shit ton about this kind of thing. And so that evening before Vesper, she marches up to the church. And like you get this scene where she like grabs Skywalker by the scruff of his neck and like shoves him against a wall. And she's like, why does he talk to you? What does he say when he talks to you? Like just like he talks to you during confession. He comes every week. What does he say? And she's just like threatening the priest, which is amazing scene. So you get out of Skywalker that he doesn't say anything. Well, sorry, it's he has his own level of communication, and he calls Ray out about like he says something like, do you need him to talk for his own good, or is it just to make it life easier for you? And so he like guilts her really hard on this kind of it's deep. But then he also brings up at the end that like he doesn't come to confession to speak words, he comes to confession and cries. And so he's like just there to get out emotions basically and try to reconnect.
Yeah, because you fucking broke him.
Yeah, you done broke him. That boy broken.
Who done broke him?
Skywalker.
So he used to talk?
Yeah, you find that out later, though. Skywalker's not actually the reason that he doesn't talk.
Correct.
Okay. She's kind of an asshole for just like assuming that he's like cheating.
Oh, that
on
he
her,
just doesn't want to talk to
basically.
her? Yeah.
Yeah. Like what if he knows sign language?
Okay, so we're gonna get to that eventually, because that's like this book is broken up into 4 major chapters, and so we're coming to the end of chapter 3 right now.
Okay.
And chapter 4 is where we're going to get into like that level of character development,
The trauma.
about the trauma and the communication and like how we can kind of move forward from all that shit. I think the next day or something, like she's sitting with this notion of, why is he crying at confession? What is it about me specifically, because it always comes back to her, about like that makes him so unhappy. And so this like Omega hindbrain thing is kicking in again. Yeah, it's real bad.
I know why.
and
It's because you keep calling him Alpha and not by his
I'm
fucking
calling him Alpha.
name.
It's all
Daddy.
in her head, right? She doesn't actually say that. Yeah, Daddy? Sorry? Daddy? Sorry? Daddy?
Why Daddy unhappy? Oh, poor me.
So the next day, Ray is standing out front of the cabin with her cup of coffee, and she's there when Rose comes to drop off the laundry, like the linens, and she confronts her about the notes. She had seen Ben pick up another note and take it back to her at one point, and so she confronts her about this to be like, what the fuck's up with the notes? And this is where you get this insight into what Rose has been up to for the last like 3 years since she's been at the convent. The first time her sister Paige had taken her to town with her, like it was after, I think it was specifically after her first heat at this place, she had promised her to take her to town as like kind of a placating measure during her heat to like help her kind of settle. And when she was in town, she came across this Alpha. And this Alpha, like, they had this moment of, like, fated mate situation where he knew that this was his Omega. And so, but obviously she's a nun at this nunnery, so she went back to the convent. So in the meantime, the Alpha had moved back, like, had moved to that town because he was just passing through or something. So he moved to the town to be closer to Rose. And they started exchanging notes back and forth. And so what he was doing was he was sending like pieces of paper and notes and stuff to give to her during her heat to like help her calm down or whatever. And so like they started building this like long distance relationship through notes that because I think it said that she was trying to send a letter to him one time and got caught and got punished for it. And then she got wise to it and started getting Ben to deliver notes back and forth. But Ben had never read them or couldn't read them or whatever. So he didn't know what any of them said or what they were. So he was just doing a good deed, basically.
So does this guy have bright red hair or no?
This guy's got bright red hair, Jack.
Yeah.
It's Armitage Hux.
Yeah, they don't actually say his name, but that's who it is.
And he hey, ASL, bitch.
There's a line that Rose says here because they start getting into like, because Ray is trying to, like, Ray comes off as very aggressive in this situation because she's like, what the fuck are you doing with my husband? Basically, like, what is going on here with this note situation? Like, is that why he's crying all the time?
Fucking business.
Jack, she has nothing else to do. Literally nothing else to do. It's terrible.
Well, pick your berries and tend to your garden. Stop being as...
she doesn't know any better, though, is the point. Like, her life has been very small and very narrow and very, like, restricted to certain things. And so she's reacting within those parameters.
Correct. Like, where she's been in the orphanage for so long, too, and then directly to the convent. It's like Ray has such a shallow life perspective. And so she ends up in these situations where she just like, and it totally shines through in the writing too, of like, she does not understand situations and what's going on. But other people around her are like kind of maneuvering these situations pretty seamlessly, and she's not. And it's just like, oh, okay, you're quite different than the rest of these people, like, oh, obviously, because of your upbringing.
Oh, right. And you said she may be on the spectrum too, didn't you?
I think part of it is too is like she's never had something or someone of her own, and here she does. She has Ben, and as dysfunctional as it may be, Ben is hers, and Ben obviously cares for her in some capacities. The idea that Ben might also have somebody else is like, dare I say, like triggering for her, because she finally has that one thing, or like the thing that she wanted.
Whatever. He bought her a dress. Come on now.
Okay, so this is an excellent time to bring up the mate situation, because so in this universe, when an Omega and an Alpha are mated, the Alpha bites their
Neck.
Omega, like their gland in their neck.
Nom, 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 nom.
And that is the sign that they are mated. So it's like more powerful than even marriage, basically, and whatever. Ben has not done that to Rey yet. And so she has this weird hindbrain thing going on in the background all the time of like, Alpha doesn't want you. He didn't mate me.
He doesn't want to bite me. Me.
Exactly. You got
There
it.
you go, Jack. Nailed it.
Nailed it. So proud of you. Such a good girl.
This chick needs therapy worse than I do.
So she's having this chat with Rose. And Rose brings up this notion that, because like, Rose is still staying here in this convent because it's what she thinks she should do. Like, again, it comes back to the control issue about being, and the purity and all this stuff of like, you're serving a higher power, so like, you should never leave, sort of thing. But then she has this kind of insightful moment where she says, are Alpha commands any worse than what they're doing at this convent? Because part of Rey's conflict with Rose too is like, well, they say you shouldn't, like, Ben can't issue Alpha commands, so I'll never be controlled in that way. And then Rose is like, yeah, but we're sitting here being controlled by these people who aren't Alphas at all. So what is really the issue with this? Like, where does the power dynamic actually lie? And so this is where they start, like, Rose specifically. And I don't know whose idea it actually is, because it never gets sussed out, but Rey is committed to the cause of freeing Rose, with a caveat that if Rose is going to go free and go live with her Alpha, then she has to take Bazine with her, because Bazine will die here. And she, like, well before her time, because she's just wasting away as a human being. So then we get into like a mini heist, basically, where Rey and Rose and Bazine basically plan this escape, and Rey uses her heat to kind of trap Ben.
A heat heist.
Yeah, it's a heat heist. Because Ben is supposed to be like kind of patrolling the grounds so that nobody breaks in or the girls don't escape or any of that stuff. And so Rey actually traps him using her heat in his home, and this is where he also mates her. Like, he bites her mating gland, because she's, and this is the part I'm going to get you to read, Jack, but it's like, she basically entraps him in a big way here that is very, not
Conniving.
good, is how I'll phrase that. It's incredibly conniving, and it's interesting because Rey, I think, is more upset by all of it than Ben is. Because it's the further you go through this book, and especially like reading it through a second time, Ben is like obsessed with Rey. Like, he is so pleased that they're married, and this is like the one person he always wanted to be with. Like, this is his fated mate. So he, like, it's not that he doesn't care about what she did, but he does it, like, she feels more guilty about it than he has any regrets about it.
Ben Solo is baby.
And Rey is daddy?
There are some instances where I wonder. Okay, so Rey, so because of this, as soon as Ben nods Rey, the superior comes and knocks on the door to be like, these two girls just escaped, you have to go get them. And of course, he's like, you can't break a knotted couple apart. That's not how anything works. So he's literally trapped here until his knot comes down. They can do anything about it. And in the meantime, of course, Bazine and Rose are long gone. And so because of this, Rey gets thrown in the infirmary to ride out her heat.
Oh, with them shackles.
Yeah, it's shackled. And so Ben is forced to sit by her side while this happens. And for an Omega to sit within arm's reach and shackled, like beside her Omega or beside her Alpha, is like another level of pure torture and really just like very scarring and damaging to her.
This is the moment where you're like, oh, the church is evil. I understand.
Yeah, this is the moment.
No, but there's like,
well, this
clearly
is, they specifically say that in this, because this is from Rey's perspective, she cites that she can see the moment where all that is emanating from Ben is doubt.
well, and the thing of it is too is that between the two of them, Ben has been consistent in his faith, and like he still goes and he still does and he still participates and he plays the role that his uncle has set for him. Like he's done nothing aside from the instance of biology to shake the boat, right? And here he is in this moment where the person that he cares for the most is in agony and he's being forced to watch it and he's not allowed to do anything about it. And not only is that an emotional fuck, but it's also like biologically just this complete and utter like soul rendering moment where everything he has put his trust in failed him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of this you get from like Rey's perspective. Like I said, it's like third person, but it follows her around. And so you get this agony and this painful and this suffering from Rey's perspective. And all you get is Ben sitting beside her, toughing it out, basically. And so you don't get the like kind of emotional feedback of what he's going through. You just get like kind of surface level stuff. But then we jump to like after her heat is over. She's having an ice bath, which is like, typically what they do to bring people, like to help people in their heat.
Because their body temperature goes up.
That's right. And so she's laying in this tub and she's like just having it out with Ben, or like, one-sided conversation.
He just stares blankly.
Well, no, he emotes and stuff, but so he's like bathing her and soothing her and like taking care of her while she's like coming down off of this bullshit. And she's like obviously fucking mad. She's so angry and she's so frustrated and upset that like this is not how people are supposed to be treated. And then she starts taking out on Ben of like I can't believe you're sitting here just like doing what they say and like you're just obediently following everything they're doing and you don't even care and like all this other shit, and just throws it back at him. And of course Ben like has the moment where he like grabs her hand and puts it on his crotch where he's like already had popped a knot because he's like sitting here just suffering the same way that she is, basically.
He popped a knot?
Yeah, he popped a knot in his pants. It's Ashton's favorite thing. He popped a knot in his pants.
Yeah.
So is that the same as a boner? Or
It's like boner.
Oh yeah,
extreme.
it's boner extra. Yeah. It's boner times 2.
it's like
at least.
boner plus plus?
Yeah.
Boner squared.
Extreme bonage.
You got
I love it. I'm going to start saying that. Oh my God, I just popped a knot, you guys. Look how good this is.
So the next day, they, Rey and Ben, like after this whole shebang, they just pack their bags. They have this moment. Rey has this moment specifically where she's like, "I'm done. I'm leaving. Like I'm finished with this place. I'm out of here." And Ben starts packing his bag, and she's like, "You're coming with me?" And he has this symbol that he uses where he crosses his fingers, and it's supposed to mean like bonded or knotted basically together. And so like he shows her that symbol. He's like, no, like we're in this together, sort of thing. Like we're gone. Like they're not treating either of us like this again. And so Ben goes to confession one last time, basically. And of course, like Skywalker's, doing his thing and like trying to quietly convince him to stay and all this shit. And then Rey ends up at the confession booth, kneeling outside of it, waiting for Ben, like supporting him basically while he's crying. And of course, like Skywalker comes out and yells at her and all this shit. And then Ben immediately is like, "You're not doing this. Like we're out of here," and defends Rey. And I think the thing that Rey yells like on the way out basically is that like you people are expecting obedience, but that's not what charity is supposed to be, because this is supposed to be a safe haven for Omegas, and it's like, yeah, but you're expecting us to follow all of these crazy rules. This is like, that's not charity. That's
Expecting obedience isn't charity.
correct. Yeah, that's transactional. So then they fuck off they fuck, and they go to Ben's mother's home. And so now we get to meet Leia, which is very fun. So Leia... Well, and so you find out that his father, Han, obviously, has died of a heart attack, I think, when Ben was 15. And this is the other thing, too. It's like you don't get ages in this one, as I think I said, but you do get the age that, like, Ben was 15-ish when his father passed away. And you also get that Ben was 15 when he had this traumatic event happen to him where he lost his voice, basically. Or he lost the ability to speak. And so this is where you get this like day-to-day stuff of like, you meet Leia, and Leia's kind of very standoffish and doesn't have a lot to do with Rey. And like just tolerates her basically. And Ben goes and helps their neighbor Lando, obviously, his father's best friend, to just yard work and shit like this. And then I think they're there for like, and I didn't get a sense, Ash, did you get a sense like how often their heat happens in this book? I feel like it was every 2 or 3 months, maybe.
I mean, it's cyclical, but I can't remember what the cycle is.
Yeah, I don't. It's like it's either like 6 weeks or like 2 months or something. I was trying to piece it together, and it was very challenging to do. So, they use the term weeks a lot. Like, oh yeah, it's like weeks passed since XYZ, and I'm like, God damn it! Like, how many weeks? Like that could be a lot or a little.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's never the same. I find like. The thing with Omegaverse is that it's so open to interpretation in terms of what the person is trying to do within the story that they're writing.
Yeah, and like I said too, that like there's not a lot of facts in this book. Like it's not super heavy on the detail, and so you get a lot of, well, not even, but like just, which I mean is probably intentionally vague. Like why wouldn't you write it that way? So we jump ahead a couple weeks. They're at Leia's. They're like kind of settling into life here. And Rey starts her next heat, and she's home by herself, and she goes through this like horrendous mental anguish of needing to disappear, or needing space away from Ben, basically. And so Ben and Leia are out at this point, so she's home by herself. She gets this overwhelming urge to just leave. And so she takes off into the backwoods. And her Omega hindbrain has like taken the full fucking over at this point. And so she like races into the woods and finds this like old barn and just basically makes like a nest for herself in this car, in this vehicle that's in there. And curls up, and then basically like she doesn't quite pass out, but she starts like coming in and out of consciousness, is how I'll phrase it. And so as she's coming in and out of consciousness, she's having this like moment, like this flashback of when she was in the convent with Bazine, talking about this book that she was reading, and how the author in the book had seen one of her pet dogs or something crawl underneath a deck when it was ready to die. Bazine is telling her the story about, oh yeah, the author for this actually did the same thing when she was feeling unwell. She like crawled under this deck and to die basically. And of course Rey is like, yeah, but like, did she die? What happened? And Bazine is like, well, I guess she didn't, because she obviously wrote this book, so obviously that's not what happened. And this like kind of, there's this like dichotomy, of course, with Rey here, where she she has come to this place to curl up and die is how she feels inside of her soul, because of this like very triggering thing that's happened to her. Like her last heat, she was chained up. She was like, you know, she was held back from her alpha, and she was made to suffer. And so like this kind of PTSD response is coming in now of like, we need to leave so that alpha can't find us, so that we can die quietly by ourselves. And of course Ben comes for her. He finds her because he can scent her pretty easily. And he takes her back to the house, and Leia, who is a beta, is like kind of confused about what's going on. Like she's not really sure what's up, but she does know that this is not normal behavior for an Omega. And so, you know, she lets them ride her heat out basically, and then as soon as that's finished, Leia is like, you are going to the doctors right now and we're going to sort this out. So Leia takes Ben and Rey to the doctor, and I can't remember the doctor's name. Ash, do you remember it? Dr.
Yoda?
Colonia.
It was harder. Yeah.
Harder Colonia.
Yeah, you got it. And the doctor basically, like, you know, tells Rey that, like, yeah, you went through this traumatic event with your previous heat, and this is a common thing that happens. And, you know, we'll just keep an eye on these things, and, like, goes down through the question list. And then also encourages Rey and Ben specifically to work on their communication, of course, as a couple. And so they end up going off. They end up going to like a speech therapist kind of situation to kind of learn how to communicate again. But in the meantime, too, because I think this is where Rey tells the doctor the story of what happened in her previous heat. And this is where you find out that Skywalker is Leia's brother, and Leia divulges the story to Rey about what happened with Ben when he was 15. She had just lost her husband. Ben was like, you know, a problematic handful, and she couldn't deal with that, so she sent him to this boys' school. And at the boys' school, he suffered this like catastrophic event that happened that nobody knows about or nobody would talk about, where Ben had severe head trauma basically, and is suffering from aphasia, and that's why he doesn't talk, or he can't talk, I should say. And so you get all this, and of course, like, Leia's standing in her kitchen having a cigarette, discussing all this with Rey, because this is like, you know, the vulnerable scene of Leia where it's like, this is my life. And Rey, of course, she gets like the flashes in her eyes of judgment of like, you're a shitty, awful parent, and you're the reason he is like this. Like, it's an interesting moment between the two of them too, because Leia doesn't really, I think that the comment is something like, Leia tolerates Rey, Leia deals with Rey, Leia accommodates for Rey, but she doesn't talk to Rey. And so this is the first time she's like talked to her and told her what's going on. So there's like this interesting moment between the two of them. And then, of course, because we have to have a happy ending, the two of them start going to like they go see a speech pathologist and start communicating with each other. And like Ben starts like leaving her notes and shit. And the very first note that he leaves her on her pillow at night or something. Do you remember what it says, Ash?
It says he doesn't like berries.
That's right. It's so fucking cute.
Oh,
He was just eating.
So he
them
had been
because he
eating
liked
all
her.
those berries. Yeah. Because again, you come back to this, like, every so often you'll get these like little Easter eggs about how much Ben really cares for her. And she was in her head about it the whole time, like, just couldn't deal with any of it. And in the meantime, he was so set on like, this is the one, I would never look at anyone else sort of situation. And so it's kind of endearing to have that nice little ending.
Because Ben Solo is baby.
Because Ben Solo's baby. So that's the end of the story. It's like a super happy ending. They start like learning how to talk to each other again, and it's really adorable and cute. The therapist they end up with is Finn, and he's an Omega.
Yeah, and Jan is the speech pathologist.
Yeah, Jan is a speech pathologist. It's great.
I love that it was like super open ended too, though. I remember seeing SecretReyloTrash post or tweet on the Twitters that like she doesn't like, what was it? Not that something about she doesn't like to like put to find a point on like whether or not couples within her like stories ended up with kids or something like that beyond what the story itself is provided, like because lots of people ask like how, you know, whatever, but this Ben and Ray, she's like, they for sure like went on to have kids and like lived a happy life, because like that made sense, right? Like that makes sense within the context of the story. And it was one of those like, oh, it's just, that's cute. And like Ben would be a good dad.
So, Jack, on that note, I have something for you to read.
Yippee! I'm bad, she persists, not liking how she's stoking his fear as his trembling hands begin to undress her from the nun's garb she put back on as a protest. It's not just your knot, it's your cock. His hips shove clumsily into hers, even with their clothes on. The dreams I have about your cock. She threads her fingers in her hair. I'm not good, not at all. He shakes his head and holds her. Ray had been too focused, swallowing her dry tongue as she listened, to blush at this lesson. Any other day she would have run and hid. Despite the reassurance, it was foolproof if she used them on her husband. Back on that bed, she hadn't pictured these words working, but meaning them right now, she knew they would topple him down. She wonders, almost wants to ask him, if it was the novice habit, not her heat, that was the recurring theme of his desire for her. Was he more wicked than he pretended to be, wanting her at her most forbidden? Because now he is crumbling above her. Her slick coats the front of his trousers, but his eyes are on her face. He keeps looking in her eyes in shock. There's something there. He wants her to understand. Her hand shakily cups his face. There's sweat on his palm. He's sweating too. A heat like this in the summer is going to be hell. I want to understand too. It's a little too real for what's actually happening. That's only going to hurt her in the long run to admit, but it's true. She swallows the lump in her throat that this means something for him to hear her say it. It's clear in his eyes that he would say it too if he could. Rose wanted this done properly, so Ray had learned a few phrases to use from a few new girls ago, who sent out those pictures of herself for alphas. Fuck me, please. I can't be good, but I'll be your whore. I want you to like it, like me. She arches when his erection, still clothed, rubs hungrily against her bare cunt. Are the words working on him or herself? She doesn't really care. Her slick poureth over. Punish me, she pleads, gripping his shirt. Punish your whore. Ben grabs her hands in one swift motion, pinning them to the kitchen rug. Her heart stops. They have ended up in a place she hadn't expected, and that place is too far. Ben's chest is heaving with his breath. He shakes his head. Her eyes shut. He's going to leave her like this, more worked up than she's ever been, on the precipice of heat and needing desperately for him to knot her. She needs him, and he's just going to leave. Ben hums with discomfort, breathing heavily before he bows to gently kiss her lips. Her tensed muscles relax. He lets go of her wrists and slowly undresses himself, carefully. When his eyes meet hers again, she knows he won't leave. But he also clearly doesn't intend to punish her. Ben pets a hand through her slick folds and groans. Even though he doesn't need to, maybe especially because he doesn't need to, he brings them to his lips and licks his fingers slowly before sliding them inside her. She hasn't been touched like this since her last heat. His silence is so honest, it doesn't blanket anything. He just touches her very carefully and spreads her open, stretches her out for him. He's not rutting as much as she needs him to be. It's nice to watch him take his time. I'm sorry, I got carried away. It felt like you didn't want me. Ben shakes his head again, looking at her with a sort of harmless amusement that she never thought was possible. Ray bites her lips with a shaky breath and brings her knees up to her chest. She's completely bare for him, in this nest of a uniform of a past life. The seal on her slick is broken. It's flowing out of her so much, and she doesn't know where it ends. He bows attentively and laps it up. Her hips flinch up into his face, whispers apologizing for jostling him, but he just closes his eyes and focuses on swiping his tongue across her opening. There's a plan here. No time for fun. Can I have your knot, please? Her husband tilts his head for a moment like he needs to think about it, but there's a warmth in his eyes. Then he crosses his fingers again. Ray wraps her hand around his twisted fingers and whispers yes. He nods finally with a patient expression she has seen 1,000 times, but only now realizes he is patient with her. Yes, nod. The shiver of anticipation has less to do with the plan and more to do with the needs of her body. These things can run alongside each other as far as possible, but she will have to swerve eventually. Ray lets out a guttural moan when he sinks into her body and knows that this is all she can give them. A head start. Thank you, she whines. Can we do this more, please? Ben bites down on his lower lip and nods frantically, drawing back to pull out and slide back in to fill her slowly. She smiles at him. Even if this isn't really fixing things, she's happy. It's not bad. It is one thing hiding another, but that's just pushing one truth to the back of the self instead of changing what is in the mirror of a lie. Ben smiles back and kisses her. Mate me? No one asked her to do this. Even Ben looked surprised she would. This was not part of the plan. She just arches her throat and bites her lips. It's not mindless heat yet, and the church considered marriage vows made in heat to be from an omega of sound mind and body, which was a farce. Her hands wandered up and down Ben's arms as he thrust, his pace faltering, uncertain. Please, I want it. Ben hums against her neck for a moment, kissing it hard, then tearing his mouth away guiltily. She strokes his back as he fucks into her. Slick is pouring out. His thrusts are so hard, there's splashes of it onto her inner thighs each time he bottoms out. Fear flickers through her, that she misunderstands. Don't you want me? Ben's body tenses up and suddenly searing hot pain floods the column of her throat from the force of his teeth. He did it. He marked her. He wanted her. She lets out a choking sound when his teeth relax from the bite. That's how much. Her head swims. Feeling his jaws snap shut on her gland unlocks an ecstasy she's never known before. She's his, and he's hers. God has nothing to do with it. She never had to give herself away entirely, but it just made sense like this. Ben licks her blood from his lips, and in a fury above her, his knot locks into her, hard. She whimpers in excitement just at the feeling. Beyond every other reason tonight, she needs this to happen. It just feels good now. Ray can only think of the pulsing flow of his cum inside her when the pounding on the cabin door starts. Ben stirs, but whines, trapped by Ray's cunt on the kitchen floor. Ray lets out a sigh of relief and then a pleasured whine, heels digging into the carpet, the whole of her cunt twitching on his knot. It doesn't stop feeling good, being knotted by her mate, her alpha, forever now.
Thanks for that, Jack.
Yeah.
How did you find that one? That sounded fun.
That was difficult to read.
Rachel's like, that sounded fun.
Did you have fun? I had tons of fun. I'm so happy.
Well, I'm glad it made you happy.
So we've come to the rating portion of the game. I think we should rate it on milkshakes,
Ooh.
Not
which seems
crucifixes.
appropriate because Jack ordered milkshakes. Let's rate this on 5 milkshakes. Ash, would you like to go first?
5 milkshakes. I'm okay. Full disclosure, it's been a while since I've read this, so I'm rating it based on my like vague recollection of how much I enjoyed it. But this definitely was one of those fan fictions that I like signed up for notifications for, so that I got emails when the new chapter dropped. So
Yeah, I should say too that like so this came out in 2020, so it's been a minute.
yeah, it was like pandemic.
That's why they're
Yeah.
not respecting COVID rules, y'all. So don't hold that against the author.
Yeah, but that's not an excuse for why they're not respecting women's rights at all. But anyway, I'm gonna go with 5. I super digged it. I was super pumped. I remember being super pumped when it came out. It's for sure not without its flaws. I mean, it's fan fiction, but viewing it as fan fiction and all that entails, I'm giving it a 5. And it's way better than the 8 fucking other Omegaverse books that I goddamn read.
I should say I need to take a moment, and I want to say I love you dearly, and I appreciate everything you do. And thank you so much for reading 1 million Omegaverse books and then settling on this one. I really appreciate it. I do, honestly.
Why can't mainstream Omegaverse be like better? I don't know how.
No,
else to
I mean,
say
listen, you're spoiled by fanfic Omegaverse. It's a thing. It's a different creature.
That's fair.
So I'm gonna say, I think I'm going to give this a 4. It's interesting because the first time I read it, I didn't read it on my Kindle, which potentially impacted how I felt about it. I'm not gonna lie. I read it on my phone, which like it's just not a great way to read a book. But yeah, the second time I read it through, I really got to digest the writing style a bit more, and I really appreciated how SecretReyloTrash like
Every time you say
didn't
it,
tell you. Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
know. It's fine. I appreciate what they didn't tell you.
Yeah.
I think because again, like especially Ben being mute in this, there's like this element of unknown, and so you get the unreliable narrator come through a lot because it's Ray's perspective, and Ray is missing so many key pieces of information, and so I feel like from like a literary standpoint, it's super well written and it's really well thought out in that regard. As far as like the Omegaverse stuff goes, cool. Like I don't have that many means of comparison, so like this is fine, I guess. I do actually really enjoy the empathetic kind of situation and how they're all like, I think one of the comments is like, once a year there's a really big fight because somebody's using someone else's hairbrush, and then it goes through the entire convent like wildfire because they all get mad at the same time and you have to pick sides, and it's like this it's kind of like a little charming addition to how the Omegaverse works in this one, that like it's kind of nice. And they say that there's not typically this many Omegas in one place, so it's like kind of a phenomenon that this is going on. So like that kind of stuff is fun. There's like so many details I have questions about, and like this entire book, like this I think it's only like 55,000 words or something. Like it's a short one. Like they could write so many offshoot stories based on this one fanfic, and it just like my brain just wanders about like what happened to Rose, what happened to Bazine, like where did these people end up, what is going on. Like the way it ended felt like a little bit lackluster because the big conflict is Ray running away to that barn in the woods basically, and that's the major conflict, and it didn't have the same tone as like the other conflicts in the other chapters. So I don't know, the flow of it was a little bit weird for me, but like overall, like solid fucking book. Like amazingly well written.
4 parts, right? Like
it is yeah, totally. And these are like episodic, so like if you read one chapter, it's a self-contained little story. And so I get that, but like the last one had better be damn fucking good if you're going to do something like that. And it better really like punch me in the guts. And it didn't punch me in the guts like I wanted it to, I don't think.
SecretReyloTrash has a, like, I think their big one is The Trail Bride, which is like, I was like scrolling through to like figure out which ones I actually had actually read. It's not Omegaverse, but it's like Wild West kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I've followed them on Twitter for ages since the pandemic, when everything kind of went weird and I didn't have work and then got lost in Reylo Twitter. You know.
The black hole that is Reylo Twitter. I get it. Totally understand.
Yeah. But I think the one thing that I like about their writing, because I have read, like they've got a lot of short stories, is it like consistently you're going to get a good like story. Like the writing is good. You're not going to be like, oh fuck, why did I waste my time reading that? Like you're not let down, particularly by the quality. Like they're a solid writer. I enjoy that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Jack, would you like to offer a rating for this? How many milkshakes are you feeling this way?
I think I would give it maybe like a chocolate milkshake, a vanilla, and a strawberry. So that's sort of like maybe like 1 3/4 of a milkshake.
Okay.
Because like a vanilla milkshake is like half. That's not a real milkshake. And then
Oh, I see.
strawberries,
Okay.
like
So yeah, okay.
strawberries, like the worst.
But now
kind.
for you though, a chocolate milkshake is like 2 milkshakes,
No, okay then. Well,
right? Because like I would argue that a vanilla milkshake is 1 milkshake because that's basic bitch milkshake.
okay. So then maybe 1, and then so would you say like a strawberry is a half a milkshake?
Yeah, I could agree on that.
It's your rating,
So
dude.
So for simplicity's sake, I'm gonna go with 1 vanilla, 1 strawberry. Yeah.
Okay.
It does not
Gotcha.
deserve a chocolate in your eyes.
It doesn't get a chocolate. Okay. That's fair.
No, but like
Is that because you had to
Yeah.
read the word slick so many times?
that was kind of odd.
Yeah.
I will
Welcome to the Omegaverse. It's a little bit odd.
slick and cunt were the key words from this piece.
Slick is
I
created
did
by Omegas in heat. They just get
Comes out of their cunts.
super slippery, slickery.
Oh, it's supposed to be like a specific actual like separate thing.
Well, okay,
Yeah, it's like more lubricated than being wet, basically.
yeah, like
It's like its own special one.
the average
It's like
chick
animal
gets
birthing
wet.
agent.
They need something to help them take that massive alpha dick.
With
Okay.
this big old knot.
Well,
Yeah.
then, if slick's like a thing, then I won't like be upset for them using that so many times. But yeah, I just found it kind of like difficult to read aloud. Maybe it's easier to like just to read to yourself, but I don't know. And then
I will
yeah,
say though that to your point, Jack, that like the writing is different, is what I'll say.
yeah. Like it's
Yeah,
not
and I agree
necessarily
with that, too.
bad. I guess I shouldn't take milkshakes away for that, but
No, but like when you like it reminds me of like reading Chuck Palahniuk sometime of like again like this like there's some shit in there that is specifically left out and that says more than what has been said. So like
Right.
the writing, it's just like a slightly more complex, I think.
And it could be because it's just like her speaking and him doing his weird like little nods and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like normally you have like
emoting
the
to it.
normally you have like the back and forth, and this is just sort of like her being a whiny little bitch, like he doesn't love me and all that shit. So that's yeah.
Totally fair. Well, thanks for that that milkshake rendition, guys. I appreciate that.
Oh, and also,
the
I just
next-
don't know Star Wars, so I can't appreciate that sort of aspect
totally
of
fair.
it.
We need to indoctrinate you to the Star Wars universe sometime. We'll get on that.
Yeah.
So,
She says, without saying it.
I mean, maybe we'll see. I'll put it on the list. So,
There's milkshakes.
There's a
in
lot
Star
of things
Wars
on the
yet.
list. If you get an Ewok to bring me a milkshake, I'll watch it.
amazing. I think we can. We'll dress Bucket Nuts up like an Ewok. It'll be fine.
Amazing.
Wesley could be an Ewok.
Wesley is an Ewok. He's adorable.
Oh.
So thanks for bringing that one to our attention, Ash. That was like AO3, man. Sometimes they deliver. It's kind of nice. So the next time we are back, we are talking about a very special book for a very special person's birthday, and that very special person is Ashton.
Hey.
And we are reading To Catch a Firefly by Emmy Sanders.
Which ironically,
And I haven't read that yet.
You
So
haven't?
I'm very excited to see what that's about. No, I have it sitting right in front of me on my desk. I need to read it. I'm gonna start
Ironically, it also is about somebody. Actually, they're selectively mute, but somebody with mutism.
tomorrow. Interesting. I'm very curious to read it. The person on the cover, he's like one of those dudes that have like man boobs that look very boobish. So I'm very
Nice.
excited to read it. It's got man boobs. Boobs.
The guy with the curly hair?
Yeah, you know how like guys when they get really built and they're like really strong and stuff, they get like super defined pectorals and they look like boobs. I'm not saying they're not hot, Ash. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying the cover looks funny.
There's definitely a difference between pecs and moobs, though.
Yeah, like.
Oh yeah, okay, totally
drastically.
fair. Here's the thing is that the lighting on this particular one makes them look like moobs, but I know they're pecs.
They are well defined.
Okay.
Pecs.
Yeah,
they're
because
well-defined
like
pecs. Anyway,
pecs come from the gym and moobs come from the ice cream. So
From the milkshake.
just
from the
saying.
milkshakes, yeah, okay. Well, thanks for summarizing that perfectly, Jack. So we'll see. That's To Catch a Firefly by Emmy Sanders. We'll be talking about that next time we're back. And thanks for joining me, guys. It's such a good time.
Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah, we'll see you next time on the Queens of Spice podcast. Bye.
Bye.
Friends. Thanks for listening to the Queens of Spice podcast. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter at Queens of Spice. Or if you want to send us an email, you can reach us at queensofspice@gmail.com.